All right, welcome everyone as we go through our Zandra 2.0. We have this session being recorded as well, so that will be available on our YouTube channel after. I'm going to hand over the presentation to Ralph Gorgal, and he is going to go through the platform.
Great. Thanks, Amber. Okay, well, so this is the Zandra 2 overview call. For just some real brief recap, Zandra is Paraben's AI-enabled analytics tool, and it has been built specifically to work with digital forensics data, as well as DFIR data. So whether it's incident response or conventional forensics, it's been specifically trained for that. Took a while to train the model, but it's not like ChatGPT or Claude that are not specifically trained for that. This is focused on that. So this is version 2.0, and for those of you who have used 1.5, you'll see that it kind of looks the same, but the back-end architecture is completely different. In version 1.5, we're storing documents in a vector database, which has its advantages. It also has a lot of disadvantages, one of those being that it takes a long time to process data, because the vector database's job is to take that document and then break it into chunks and create a 3D map of where all the data is. In version 2.0, we've done away with the vector database, and we are using a PostgreSQL database. So it is much faster on inference. We also have full text indexing of the database enabled, which runs in the background. So once you're actually running searches, what's happening is we're actually feeding it conventional SQL queries, and you're able to get the data back much faster. Some things that are definitely different in 2.0 versus 1.5 is we have some more integrated case management. We have thrown, from a user interface perspective, everything into one cohesive, very accessible workflow. So we have these tabs at the top where we can switch between the chats and the documents themselves, details about the case. The prompt library is there as well. We'll go into that in a minute. So in chat, this is where we are working with the data that we're wanting to analyze. We have all of the documents that are available in the case. Here in Zandra 1.5, you had to go through two different screens to see the documents that you are working with, but you could never actually view them. Here you can view them. We're not going to view them because they're all just text files. But here we can select which ones we're going to have analyzed, or we can analyze all of them. In documents, we can see all of the documents that are in the case. We can then tag the documents, and we'll go through tagging here a little bit. Here's the view document icon. We can download the same documents. In Zandra 1.5, once you uploaded a document to the vector database, it's broken down to its components, and you could never download it again. Here, you can actually download the original document again. This button will allow us to analyze the documents for malware. In a lot of the cases that we work with, that there may be attachments that are in emails, and you don't really know if opening up the attachment may or may not be harmful to your analytics system. So here we can have a cursory look at the document itself, analyze it for embedded code, and then of course we can delete documents from the case. We'll get into these download buttons, but you can download all the documents that said to be produced, or export all the logs. In details, we have all the basic case details, when it's created, total number of documents, total number of conversations, an overview, Every case is assigned a unique number, so we can always track all of the activities that happen on a particular case. We can then download logs of documents that have been tagged. We can also export all the conversations. So from an auditing perspective, you can simply just download every conversation that's associated with a particular case. And you can also export a list of all the files that are in the case and make that available to whoever needs to have access to it, right? So that's a little bit, very, very different than in 1.5. We've integrated the prompt library here to be a little bit more accessible than it is in 1.5. And we're allowing users to be able to add prompts to the prompt library. So when you get Zandra 2.0, you get a copy of the library, but if you want to modify a prompt and only make it available to your users the way you like it, you can do so. And when you make a modification, it does not update the global prompt library. You can also add your own prompts. So that's pretty cool. We'll get to that in a little bit. In terms of the role-based access control, there are two levels of users. We have regular users and we have managers. So managers can create cases. They can assign users to cases. One of the options that we have is perhaps you may want to create a user account for, let's say, maybe you have a client and you want to give them access to just their data. You can create an account for that client to be able to log on, and then you simply restrict that they can only see their data and no other data, and then give them the ability to not only look at the data, but then run AI analytics against it. And they can create documents within the case, tag them, make them available for production if they want to, right? So to create a case is pretty simple. You hit the create user button. You enter a username, an email, assign a password, and then assign a role, either as a standard user or as a manager. That's it. So managers obviously have access to everything. They can create accounts, they can create users. Managers can upgrade a user to a manager level, right? So that's it in terms of creating a new user. But we can also assign permissions. So here is where we can say, okay, we have a case. In this case, let's say this VAP, value added case here. If I want to assign a user, I can simply just click the assign user button and decide which user it is I want to give access to it. So in this case, this one, and then what kind of access privilege they need to have, so they can have read only, so they can only view the documents and the conversations, or they can become a contributor where they can chat with the AI and save documents, or you can give them full access to the case where they can upload new stuff, they can edit and delete documents as well. So those are the options that you can have there. Right? In terms of managing a case, that's here. So you simply select the case you want to have to manage, and then you can archive all the case chats to a permanent archive before you delete them. It just gives you a pretty brief overview of who the owner of the case is, total number of documents, total threads, total conversations, and then it gives you the ability to then delete the case or archive them off. Right? And let's go back here to the dashboard, and that gets us back to the dashboard. Right? So that is a really brief overview of case management and user accounts, creating them, and that sort of thing, right? So let's kind of get into some of the more really fun new stuff. One of the features in Zandra 2.0 that we didn't have in 1.5 is document tagging. So a tag is simply a way of putting additional parameters to a document The documents themselves can be tagged individually or as groups, but also you can also tag and create a derivative document of something else. So if you, let's say you have a couple of emails that you have analyzed, and there's a particular word or a phrase that does not need to be made available to an opposing counsel or another expert or whatever, you can redact that document simply by telling it, find this word in this email, and then simply replace the word, whatever the word is, or the phrase is, or or say, find the paragraph that relates to this project and replace the entire paragraph with the word redacted in it. So now you've created a derivative of the original. You can mark it and tag it as a redacted document, or as said to be produced, or whatever, right? So you can then include that and make that a new permanent document in the case, right? So here's an example of a search that we ran, right? Well, we gave it a parameter, we gave it all this data over here. It then made the analytics of it, and then we decided to, we like this, so we tagged this particular chat as a derivative. We gave it further tagging of it's going to be produced and it is responsive to the matter in hand, right? And so what it did there was it then created a full copy of this entire thread and made it its own independent document inside the case. So now we can export that particular text thread or that particular search criteria, right? So to tag a document or to tag a text thread, once it's been completed, you have these options here. We can save a clean content, which is if we had a criteria of here's what I'm looking for, and I just want to save the results, that would be it. So if you save it as a clean, what's going to happen is whatever the results of the search were, that's what's saved. A full response means it will save the prompt as well as the reply, which you can then make available. If it's redacted, you can tag it as redacted, or you can tell it to produce it, right? So that's a little bit about tagging, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So let's go ahead and do a typical kind of analytics, and we'll go through the prompt library. We'll find a prompt that we want to use. We'll select some documents, and then we'll run those searches, and then we'll tag them appropriately, right? So if I wanted to analyze a lot of data and I really didn't have an idea for what I'm really looking for, I can go here to the prompt library, right? And so in the prompt library, everything is categorized by task. So the task is account blackouts. Here's the input prompt. You can go through there and like if you wanted to search for memory analysis, you can simply just type in memory, right? And then it'll find all the prompts that are associated with memory analysis. It'll take a second to process through all that data. And then it'll say, here are all the prompts that are associated with memory analysis, whether it's malware analysis or RAM or whatever, system memory, whatever. Right? So you can also search the prompt library by a context, right? So it's something like, I want to search all my data for how it all fits together generally, right? So now we can use AI to do context awareness, and it will then search all the prompts that will be along the lines of that. So here is a general forensic analysis. It's going to analyze various links, forensic data. That's great. I think that works pretty well. Here you can copy the entire prompt to the clipboard. Here you can actually view the prompt. And if you want to make a change to it, like let's say here's a placeholder. I want to change that placeholder. You can change it and then update the prompt. And off you go. In this case, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to copy this back up here. I'm just going to copy this to the clipboard, cancel it. I'm going to go back over to my chat. And so first thing is I want to analyze all the data except certain ones. So I'm just going to select all the documents. So that's going to mass select all of them. But now I want to deselect the ones I know I don't want to have analyzed, like these. So this is previous searches. I don't want to have those analyzed, but I do want to analyze the rest of this stuff here. So now I can just paste in here the prompt and then go back, and I'm just going to delete out the placeholder and say all the attached. So you have access to the attached data sources. Now, analyze it and see how it all works together, or how it all fits together. Just send it off to Zandra, and it will now go through the process of analyzing the data. There we go. And normally something like this would have taken probably about 30 to 40 seconds in Zandra 1.5, but because 2.0 uses a much faster retrieval mechanism, we get stuff a lot faster, right? So now it's going to go back through, it's going to analyze how all of the data interrelates to one another. It's going to look at the emails, what people were talking about contextually, which in this case is we're going to exfiltrate out our corporate data and get it to our competitors. It will then look at what they were talking about. It will then look at the text fragments of user number 2's forensic image that we've already given it, that cross correlates to what they were talking about. They're also talking about copying the data to USB, and here's where we're accessing the jump list and the shell bags, and we're analyzing that in the jump lists. Those same files that were produced by the SQL query are now present in the USB drive. We have the text conversations where they're talking about things, where the WhatsApp messaging, all that stuff, right? So it's analyzed everything. We like the way that it looks. And so now I want to be able to tag this, and I want to save the full response. So I want to give it a name. Let's just say this. This is going to be the full analysis. Emails and supporting. All right, so that's going to be the name of the file. We want to identify that this is if this were a derivative of an email, I would select derivative, but in this case, it's not derivative of anything. It is responsive. I want to produce it ultimately. There's not redacted, not responsive. It's fine. Just go ahead and save it. Yep. So now it is now one of the files in the case itself, right? So that's tagging. If you want to also tag a document at any point in time within the documents interface, you can certainly do so. Accessing the tags over here, you can then update tags. So pretty simple to work with. So that's tagging. Malware analysis is a first level analytics of the basic code that's in a particular document, right? So in this, like this JavaScript clock is a demo PDF that has a lot of embedded Java in it that runs a clock, and you can reset the clock and stuff like that, right? So what Xandr will do is it will have that first level analytics of, well, what functions are being called here. Does this level of analytics, let's say, open up another website? Does it call down data from the internet? Does it invoke a particular function? Something that definitely means when you open this up, something else is going to happen, which is a real common attack vector for malware, stuff like that, right? So if you are investigating a case like that and you don't want to have it exploded on your analytics system, you can upload it to Zandra and at least have that first cursory level analytics. It will only do first level analytics because if we needed to actually get to the underlying code itself, then we would need access to the kernel, which obviously a web browser is not going to allow like that. So, but to get to that first level, you simply just select the file you have analyzed, click the Analyze for Malware button. It's going to look at that first level code, and in this case, it's going to say, okay, fine, this has a bunch of JavaScript that's going to invoke this clock counter. It's embedded into the thing. It's going to also have these external URLs that it's calling, which is very typical of the way that malware would work. And it's going to look at the types of calls that are there, the processes that are being done. We know that it's going to call winjack.com. It's going to say, okay, I'm fairly uncertain about whether this is good or bad, but you now have one level of analytics that from here you can then take that document, put it into a sandbox operating system, then be able to explode it, and then be able to analyze what it's actually doing. And then some documents, are fairly mundane, and they'll come back easily as, yeah, there's nothing here. So this text file has nothing to it, right? Some documents, like CSV files, like this one, because there are words in it like shell, and those other indicators, it's going to say, well, I'm really uncertain about it. It's just a CSV file, right? But because there are words in it that would normally be invoked with VB code, I'm going to mark this as uncertain, unknown. So you may want to elevate that to the next level of analytics, right? So that is that first level malware triage, right? Something kind of cool is being able to view the documents themselves. And when you download the document or view the document, it's going to actually just download it in the exact same format as here, right? So if this is what we tagged, all this, what you'll get is a text file that literally reads the exact same thing, okay? Let's see, what else can we want you tagging? Yep, we did that. So if we go to documents and we want to look at the documents for download, we can hit this download produced. And what this will do is it will create a zip file of only the documents that are marked as produced, right? So in this case, it would include this document in the zip file, but it would not include this because it has no tagging. It would include this one. It would not include this one because it's not marked as produced, and it wouldn't include these as well, right? So only the ones that are marked to be produced would be in that zip file. So you do that, click on produce, it then creates a zip, and you can save it, right? Exporting the log will export out all of the logs of all the evidence items, and they'll just be produced as text files. If you want a log of all the documents that are tagged and how they're tagged, you can export them out as text or as CSV. and then exporting out all the conversations. Click on this. I won't do that. Right, and now it'll export out all the conversations that are part of this case here, from top to bottom. Right, so that is what's new inside of Zandra 2. You really notice the interface is pretty cool, but what you really notice is the speed at which the data starts to be made useful is a lot faster than 1.5. We're pushing, much faster throughput speeds, and it just makes life a whole lot easier, because the stuff that used to take a long time to analyze and go through, that trudgery sort of stuff, happens in 2 minutes or less, right? So all those routines that you do over and over and over again, you can simply just have Xander do it, and it'll just pump it out for you in no time flat, right? So that's a good high level overview of what is new in 2.0. Does anybody have any kind of questions about that, or anything that you want to talk about? Okay. Emery, got anything?
Nope, no questions. It might be good to talk a little bit more about the security difference between the two. Were there any changes between Xandra 1.5 and 2.0?
Yeah, from a security perspective, there are no differences in how we protect the data. The PostgreSQL database has the ability to be encrypted, and we're using the middleware tool to do that, so everything stays encrypted. In the 1.5 version, we had the vector database, which obfuscated the data. But now, since we're in PostgreSQL environment, we are encrypting the entire thing. All the data, again, stays local to the server. Nothing is shared outside of that. The processing, is done the exact same way on Paraben's private cloud, so nothing leaves that environment. The entry access is the same. We go through the portal, email, password, sends you a 2FA. You then are directed to the new Xandra login portal, where you will then enter a name and password for your particular instance itself. So that's, it's the same. The same mechanisms are in play. We're going to the nth degree to make sure all the data does not leave your particular environment. And again, you're not sharing your server with anybody else. It is your independent server, and nobody else has access to it. In 2.0, there's a lot easier mechanism to archive. Like archiving in 1.5 and then deleting the case is probably about a 6-step process to do that. And in 2.0, it's literally 2 clicks of a mouse, and we've archived the entire thing, and then 1 button to delete it, and you're done, right? So the ability to recoup space on the server is a lot faster, and the process flow is just a lot neater.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. If there's no other questions, I mean, there's the big things that are different. From a workflow perspective, I'm really liking the fact that everything is in just a bunch of tabs, right? You don't have to keep moving around. Everything is available in just one interface to be able to move between functions.
We do have a good question that was asked. When it comes to taking Xandra analytic results to court, what is the process for that? What is the backup mechanisms that kind of go through that vetting process associated with the AI itself? Since the courts are going back and forth in AI data and data analytics from AI is fairly new, how is that being dealt with?
I don't think that there's nothing different in 2.0 than we did in 1.5. And when we look at AI, it really needs to be thought of as a really, really skilled junior or high level analyst, right? So no matter what, even if it's a human being that says, here's what happened, right? As a forensics person, our job is to validate that data, right? So no matter what Zandra says happened, our job is to then go back and say, okay, just as we would with a human being, did what the human find actually exist, right? So we're going to go back, and if it says, here's the text message, we're going to go back to the text message and say, is it there? Yes or no, even if it's a human that produces it, right? Certainly we do that with the opposing counsel. So no matter what the AI finds, we're going to go back, we're going to validate that ourselves so that one, we can ensure that the AI did or did not find what is actually there, or it did or did not interpret or misinterpret data, just as we would with a human analyst who may think, well, here's what I think that happens, but then when you're looking at it, you go, well, that's not what I think happened, and we want to go further down that analytical path. On top of that, we need to have first party knowledge about the underlying facts so we can write the report so we can then testify about it in court. So we're not saying the AI found this. How you find the data, whether it's through an AI tool or dumping a jump list to an Excel spreadsheet and then manually sorting through it yourself, how you find the data is really irrelevant. It's your personal analytical understanding of it, and you are the one that's testifying about the veracity of the evidence being introduced.
So part of that process, and a good follow-up question with it. So if I needed to produce, and I know we had this in Zandra 1.5, but if I wanted to pull the audit information of my prompts, of the communication back and forth that happened as I was doing analytics with Zandra, where would I find that?
Yeah. So where you would go is over here to the K in the details, and then you would see the export conversations. So if you click on the export conversations, it will then export all the prompt that was entered as well as the reply back from the AI. Right? And if you wanted to produce that, you certainly could.
Perfect.
And when you do that, it will have the case ID attached to it. It'll have all the pertinent information of what the files were that were being analyzed, what the input prompt was, what the reply back was, as well as the conversation ID itself. So it'll have the case ID, conversation ID, full auditing of that thread.
Thank you. Is there a limit to the types of data that can be put into Zandra? They don't have to directly come from E3. They can come from anywhere, correct?
Yeah, they can come from anywhere. The limitations are that you cannot upload a complex compound file. Now, for example, in 1.5, if you tried uploading a zip file, because the AI, its job initially is to parse that data, it cannot unzip the file to then say, there are 100 documents in here and I've got to then parse out the file this way. In 2.0, you can upload a zip file, which is different than in 1.5. It will take the zip file, copy it to a temporary folder in memory, unzip it, and then it will then extract that and then upload that data to Zandra. It works really well. It takes a long time to do so. Just a conventional zip file will be upwards of 15, 20 minutes to do that, right? But there's like other things that go in the background. Certainly, you cannot upload a SQLite database. There's no way for it to analyze SQLite database. You would want to mount the SQLite database, export the data to something like a CSV or to an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can upload that. You certainly cannot upload a forensic image. There's no way for it to mount the image. In some future software that we're developing, yep, you can mount the image locally. It's great, it's fantastic, but that's not in Zen 2.0 yet. So those kinds of files it can't support, but all the other file types, yeah, not a problem.
Don't have any other questions that are in there.
Let's see. Nothing else in the list you can see? Okay, great. Okay.
Okay. Great. And to review, if I have Zandra 1.5 and I want to go to Zandra 2.0, I cannot move my data, correct?
Yeah, they do not talk to one another because the backend databases are totally different. So if you want to get 2.0, we would give you your own 2.0 environment. You would continue to run 1.5 until you finish the cases you're working on. Or if you wanted to migrate that case data over 2.0 and then delete it from 1.5, sure, not a problem. Either one works.
Were any of these upgrades changed in Investigator?
The prompt library is integrated into Investigator, but none of the other functionality that's in 2.0 is in Investigator. There's no tagging of documents. There's no triage enabled because that's a totally different kind of app.
Perfect. Thank you.
Pretty cool. All right. Let me see. Okay. That's it. All right,
Okay.
So I don't see any other questions that have popped up in the thread.
Nope. I think we're good.
Okay. Great.
As always, since we are posting this on our YouTube channel as well, we will have a QR code at the end that allows you to schedule one-on-one demonstrations, and you can discuss what your individual needs are in using Zandra.